I've been a fan of Dracula since I was a little boy. Some of the first horror films I saw were the Hammer Dracula films with Lee and Cushing, so vampires have been flapping around my head for most of my life. I was then obviously very excited to hear about this latest adaptation for the BBC, especially knowing that Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat were the creators. There's no disputing Mark's knowledge or love of horror. He even played a vampire in the League of Gentlemen Christmas special, and together with Moffat, they've resurrected Sherlock Holmes and brought a contemporary edge to the much-beloved tales, and they've so far managed to breathe new life, or death, into the story of the Prince of Darkness, which is no easy task, to take the story that's over a century old, with a very passionate and loyal fan base, and maintain respect for the source material whilst trying something new. But that's what this adaptation is succeeding in. The lore that everyone knows is expanded rather than reinvented, with new twists on Dracula, his powers, his knowledge of those powers, and the effects of vampirism. Alongside the established scenes we've seen before, from the sinister stagecoach journey at the beginning to the Count scaling the castle walls, there are new scenes which feel completely and naturally part of the story. The story itself begins with Jonathan Harker having already escaped the castle, now a shadow of his former self, recounting his tale for the benefit of two nuns as he attempts to convalesce. The narrative shifts back and forth from past to present as the story unfolds. John Heffernan as Harker is a revelation, playing the characters to such extremes as to suggest he is two separate entities. The jovial, adventuring Englishman who finds himself embroiled in a nightmare, and the hollow, timid, damaged thing with a story to tell that he becomes. Dracula is a spectacle to behold, at turns decrepit, seductive, ruthless, pitiful, and monstrous. Claysbang is perfectly cast, just as at home oozing suave as bearing fangs, hissing, and covered in gore. When the script allows Dracula to be menacing, he is downright scary. I didn't so much enjoy the Count's newfound sense of humour. The quipping's a little forced, and it seemed like they'd written him as they'd written Moriarty for Andrew Scott, and whilst it worked for him, I don't think it worked for Dracula. His tendency to refer to Harker as Johnny, for example, as if to give him a sort of cheeky likability, grated on me rather than endeared him to me, and I just didn't think it was necessary. He's Dracula, and frankly, he doesn't need a new gimmick. He's charismatic and seductive enough without a faux relatability, but as a monster, he completely lives up to the expectation. Dolly Wells is excellent, providing a more convincing comic undercurrent with her portrayal of a straight-talking nun to whom Harker confides. She is also wonderfully affecting in her more tender moments, delivering all with an obviously very well-rehearsed Dutch accent. She is a worthy foil to the Count, and much, much more. Whilst there is some mildly ropey CGI, it is a BBC adaptation, and there's actually one scene in particular involving a baby that actually made me laugh out loud when it shouldn't have. The practical effects are fantastic, and the story certainly doesn't skimp on the horror or the gore. Much of the horror actually comes from the aforementioned newer scenes. Without wishing to spoil anything, as well as the Count's terrifying, malevolent snarl, there are some genuinely grim moments. Another new addition, a scene which centres around some rotting corpses being unearthed from some boxes, is straight up scary. There are some lovely homages too. One shot involving some stairs was obviously a direct reference to Christopher Lee's legendary portrayal of the Count, and the exteriors of Castle Dracula itself were filmed at Orava Castle in Slovakia, the same castle used for the same purposes in 1922's Nosferatu. All in all, this is a faithful enough adaptation so as not to seem alien to established fans, such as myself, but with enough new blood so as to avoid the trap of becoming stale. Part 2 looks to be partly centred around the ill-fated voyage of the Demeter, which I've long held the belief would make a great standalone movie, so I find myself excited once again. Thank you for listening. You can catch this on the iPlayer. Do me a favour and give this video a like if you enjoyed my ramblings, and a sub, maybe. Thanks for listening. Enjoy.